Hello, hello. Well, I'm up to something, and this is an invitation to join me. I've had some complaints recently that my videos have gotten too quick. I'm too much to the point, and so this is an effort to get back to my old meandering ways. Um, okay, so I shot a roll here of Foma 100. Foma 100. Right. It is a good film. If you are a film shooter, black and white shooter, at some point you're gonna encounter this film. It's in addition to being marketed by Foma, there are other companies that bulk roll it and sell it under a different name. Let's see. I'm gonna pull that up. Right. So you can get it as Arista EDU 100, Lomography Earl Grey 100, Cosmo Photo 100. I don't know if Film Photography Project offers it. I would guess they do, but I don't readily know it. But what I'm up to, really, I've shot this film before, is there's a new company called One Lot Film. And they reached out to me about what they're up to. And I was interested because I like having a good source of bulk rolled film. And right, I know some of the challenges and problems you run into because I do it myself, and I've also tried a lot of the companies that do this. And I'm interested in what One Lot is doing. So, I said, send me some of your samples and I'll test it and see if your quality is good. So I got a roll of their Foma 100, which I don't see it listed on the site here, but I'm sure it's coming soon. So this is One Lot Film, Foma 100. And I know that they're going to offer it on their website, and at some point it'll be on Royal We Film Lab. And so this is sort of like, it's a video for me as I learn Foma 100, and I'm also sort of gonna, this is good feedback for One Lot Film. Okay. All right, a little bit more about what I did here. I metered at 200, and I'll explain that here in a second. Right, I do typically, right, my default is to underexpose, right, to meter a little under box. And then when I develop, I do some amount of pushing, right? That's just the look I like. And so here I'm metering at 200, and I'm mostly just, right, I have an M6, and I'm just mostly metering for midtones with my meter set to 200. And the lens on all these shots is the 35mm Summicron version 1 8 element. I have both mounts right now. I have the goggle mount going, and I'm really liking it. So I'm using my 0.58 M6 with the goggles, so it's like a 0.47 magnification, and yeah, it's like my new favorite thing. Okay, and then for a developer, I use 80-degree undiluted Xtol for 5.5 minutes. Right, why? So I do like the Foma tech sheets. And so this is Foma 100 tech sheet. Here's Xtol undiluted, and it's showing a 20-degree development and a 30-degree development. And what's interesting to me here with the Xtol is I can actually get a little more speed out of the film with a hotter development. So I put my eyes over here on the right, and I was like, well, I can get up to 160 here as a film speed with a little extra development, right? I have to get into some higher contrast, but I don't mind that one bit. So yeah, I metered at 200, and I'm doing, I chose, basically I did 5.5 minutes, which is actually off the chart. However, I did bring the temperature down a little bit. So I ended up doing, instead of like 85 degrees, I just did 80 degrees. Um, so, but basically I went sort of high contrast, trying to get my speed up to something like a 160, metered at 200. Now, it is interesting that like Foma 400 and Foma 200 are not really 200 and 400, right? They're coming up short. But with their 100 line, you can actually exceed and get to 160. I'm not going to do that right now, but I feel like, it's like Foma 400 is really more like a 320 speed. So it is interesting how much, from going from their 100 to their 400 product line, you're really just talking about one extra stop of speed. So unless you're going for the graininess of that 400 speed film, which I often am, right? The 100 product line is very interesting. All right, some just quick feedback for one lot is the metal canister worked great. The leader was cut very well. I noticed that when I first kind of pulled the film out, it took a little bit of a tug, and I don't know if that's just because it's wound so tight. And sometimes if I get like a new Ilford, right, it's sort of pretty easy to pull the leader out. And it wasn't that hard, right? It just took a little extra strength to kind of get the leader going. I don't see that as a problem, but just some feedback. And then, right, it shot great through the camera. I got to the end. I got 37 shots on the roll. Could have been 38. I skipped the first shot. When I evaluated for light piping at the very front of the roll, I saw very, very little, very kind of comparable to what you would get with like a new Ilford or Kodak product. Nothing that got anywhere near my frames, so that was really good. And then the connection was very strong. The tape connection was very strong. I yanked on that thing hard with my camera and in my own hands, and had no chance of pulling it apart. So that was really good. And then I also got the last frame in my camera. So nice work there. I would say there's only like a sliver left, like maybe a millimeter or two as a close call, but I did get my last shot. So all that is just good. Okay, and then I also found 0 scratches. So just getting those things out of the way. All right, Foma 100. Yeah. So here the 8 element is given a little bit of glow, right? You see off the table here at the end of the table, that's a lot of bright light, and this is even 2.8. So you think of sometimes, right? I've even said, right, if you put it to 2.8, you basically kind of kill the Leica glow. But that's, again, it's like if you add enough light, right? Even that 2.8, you're gonna get some glow right here again, right? And so that's not the film, that's the lens, right? That's not film halation. That's lens glow. And yeah, this is good shadow detail here. Like I feel like I got the speed, right? No surprise there, really. I followed directions. Often when I start a roll, I take 2 shots that are basically the same, just because sometimes that first frame can get messed up. So I just kind of pop 2 here. And Foma 100, I wish I had a side by side, but I feel like it's really good with these higher tonality. See here in the floor, right? It's like really smooth tonal gradation through that particular part Just looks really good. Right. Here I am. I think I focused on my book here. Right. It's like I'm getting the Harris, the author of the book. Right. Right. This is 2.8 in a 60-year-old lens. And both the film and the lens are resolving quite nicely. Right. And I bet my shutter's not super fast yet here either. So, all right, this image has been up for a while, so let's move on. And this is, I'm showing all the whole roll. It's not my best work. Sorry. This is less about great photos and more about the film this time. Yeah, I take my kids to soccer practice, and I have 2.5 hours twice a week, sometimes 3 times a week, where they're playing soccer and I'm just like putzing around in the park. So I was getting this thing, right, and the dog came in the picture, and so I was like, I'll snap a dog. And then I took another shot here where the dog had left, and I sort of got the composition I saw the first time. And the film again, right? It's definitely a 100 speed film, right? It's like, I should say something about how I edited here. Like, these are just as simple as I can get. Just scan it, set a black point, set a white point, and then that's it, right? I typically, I'm pretty a heavy editor at the end of the day, and I didn't do that on any of these, right? I'm trying to show the film off and sort of its the film development combo here, and not sort of hide things through editing. I like the way this shadow sort of, I think when I come back, I think I'm going to crop that in, because I really love the way this kind of shadow right here was kind of, I don't know. This is a dumb shot, right? This is, you can kind of get a sense of like what it's like to have 2.5 hours to kill while your kids play soccer. I love you kids, but it is a long time just to, yeah. Again, it's like here's what I'm focused on. It's a real quick development at 5.5 minutes, right? I do every 30 seconds for the first kind of 2 minutes, 2.5 minutes, and then I back off, and I was just doing every minute towards the end. It is sharp. It is sharp. It is really good definition. Right? It's hard to complain about the tonality or the detail. Now, this was kind of tricky to meter, right? I risked overexposing because I really wanted to make sure I opened up these shadows, because I kind of thought, right, my image might end up being something like that. It's sort of like, I don't want to say scary, but like this is at the school, and it's like, I mean, I'm sure it's like the lawnmower, right? But it's, I don't know. Yeah, and if I come up here, right, this is probably like, I'm going to guess like 5.6, right? And that's edge definition, right? I'm not seeing much kind of flare there, right? This is, this sign. I just kind of thought, it's like, what is this sign, right? It's like only like 16 inches out of the ground, and like it's pointed away from the sidewalk. I didn't even go around the side to read it. Right? It's like, I don't know. It just seems like a dangerous object to have by a school. Yeah, but then just to nerd out on the film, like it looks really good. And again, I probably had to stop down just because I'm, limited by my shutter here, and I can't shoot wide open in this much sun. Um, this one I was interested in the shadow here. This is probably going to require a crop. Yeah, the grain is very fine, but it's very nice. Right, I have made this has no sharpening applied. There's no clarity. There's no structure. There's no attempts to be modifying other than just what my SL2S was captured out on the sensor. Now this is sort of an interesting. Sometimes this amount of like, the similar midtone. I don't always love it with some films. I can't put words on it, but sometimes like Tri-X, I don't know, somehow it like looks flatter when it doesn't need to be, and I don't see that here at all. Like this midtone, all of this midtone looks really good and nice to look at. All right, I shot Arkansas because I'm from Arkansas. I'm up, not all the way over here to this top left corner by the crack, a little more, kind of halfway between that crack and this little piece of wood. That's where I'm from. I like the way that crack was, it's not the Mississippi River, but it's not too far off from being the Mississippi. Well, maybe like 300 miles off, but yeah, what is that? 250 miles. I wonder, I'm going to try to open up this shadow down here a little bit. Yeah. I mean, that's not how I'm going to leave it, but I was curious just to see how much was there. It doesn't really look like, there's nothing about this that looks like underexposed and pushed, right? It almost looks, it almost just looks like normal exposure and normal development. I like that there was a hat on top of this post. I mean, here some of these highlights are getting a little hot. Let me see if I can kind of. Right, that extra development can sometimes push your highlights a little too far out, but I don't know. I usually like that look. I'm trying to remember what I focused on. Maybe the hat. Now this was sort of a tricky one to meter. The sun is coming right across the front of it and sort of almost towards me, right? This is like high risk of flare. It's difficult to know what to meter on, but I risked overexposing because I really wanted to make sure I could get to this, get to what was on the side of the mailboxes. And I would say I did that. And even though I overexposed this, right, it all looks good and sharp. And it had this nice benefit of opening up these shadows here on that right side. This was probably 2.8, right? You can kind of see this out of focus area here. That's nice. It's got that the 8 element does a nice job of right, sometimes I think there are a lot of people would say, right, they like sort of where vintage and modern kind of blend, right? It's like, don't want to go total modern, but we like a little vintage character, right? And this is, to me, this is a good example of that. Okay, this one, right, this was a tricky one because there was a ton of sunlight beaming off the side of this, right? And, it's like, what am I trying to take a picture of, right? And where do I want to meet her? But I decided to come into this right here and make that my midtone. And then I backed out, which meant that this stuff that was getting the sun was going to get blasted. And you can see that. So then if I let's just say I try to bring that down, right, just to kind of see what would it be like if I tried to bring this back closer to a midtone. I would actually say that that actually looks really good. Right, I was thinking that the grain would sort of start to get large and sort of homogeneous, but that is not what happened. Wow. It actually has a lot of interesting texture and is not at all overwhelming. Huh. Interesting. So this is one of those places where, like, this is not a good photo, but like I get sort of sucked into the beauty of black and white film. This is still during soccer practice, mind you, right? I just went for a little walk while my kids played soccer. Yeah, I think I remember focusing on this thing. This will be more interesting when I do an aggressive edit. This is my son playing goalie. Right? He's trying to learn to stay outside the cones. It's like, so you can't really be goalie in the league. You're not supposed to guard the goal. So he's as close as you can be without it being a violation. Right? Again, you get this, like, see this, the flare off these cars. And again, that's the lens, not the film. I mean, I guess I could be wrong about that, but I know this lens well enough to know that happens. Even on like a digital camera. This shot is I'm kind of interested in this porta potty and the trash can, and then a couple people walk in and I get all excited but I get the shutter speed wrong. So I mean, it's okay. It's probably nice that they're blurry. All right, this was a shot where it was like this. Right, this woman is in a pretty deep shadow of a tree, and then you got all these kids in the bright sun, right? And so if this was like a true underexpose and push, this wouldn't look like this, right? This almost looks like a box speed treatment, which is impressive. It's like, if you come back to my here, it's like I'm basically way out here on the chart, right? I'm pushing for that 160 speed, and my contrast index was probably close to 1. I didn't measure my densities. Maybe I'll do that here at the end. Now, my son Ellery joined Cub Scouts, and he's put on his uniform for the first time and headed to Cub Scouts. And I was sort of trying to plan to catch him on the way out, as I did, but they were running late, and I didn't want to. I knew if I had been like, stop for a photo, it would have not gone well. So this was the shot I got. Which I like. There is, like, for my own appetite, I have to ask, like, like, I really do like a little more grain, right? A little more contrast, a little more pushing, right? That's kind of where I fell in love with black and white photography and mostly what I'm up to. And sort of whenever I'm shooting a 100 speed film or something slower, I'm like, why? Like, would I still prefer this to like a monochrome camera? And I think I would, just because of right? Again, it's like it's not super detailed, right? I'm not getting really in there with the detail. Um, Instead, you kind of meet the grain, and I like that. I like that. Now this is a good example, even though it's a not a good shot. I overexposed this by a mile. I I just saw the dog and my friend's son here on the tree, and I thought, I didn't even know what my camera was set at, and I just went for it quick. And it was good I did, because 1 second later, this moment was gone. But I then checked my settings and calculated that I was about 4 stops overexposed. Um, and so now we can see, and this is sort of what I expected in the other shot, right? It's like this type of grain when you really, really overexpose, right? It kind of gets large and blocky. And there's just like no pattern or tonal differences, and it just sort of happened here in the tree too, right? It's kind of ugly. I mean, yeah. I say that now, but who knows? In a year, I might be like, "Oh, I love that look." Yeah. So a good example of a giant overexposure. Okay, I think that was really maybe my most egregious overexposure on the roll. All right, now we are not at soccer practice. I took my oldest son Ellery, and we're on a hike with some friends here in Portland, right on the Willamette River. Right, I like this one. Right, this is my shadow, my friend's shadow, and then our kids are both throwing rocks, and I really got Ellery like in the intensity of the throw. Um, and something else I wanted to watch for with Foma 100 is, and I don't think it's true, right? Actually, I'm pretty sure it's not. Is some films are a little extra red sensitive, and I don't like my family's skin tones and lips. Um, but Foma 100 is fine. It's also pretty remarkable that I left this film up for days, and I was worried it was going to be dusty, and it scanned so clean. Yeah, here's one where this is what I focused on. Yeah, I like that shot. Yeah, that one too. I mean, if anything, it looks like there's a touch bit of overexposure on these shots. This one was this is a 2.8 shot, and I don't know that I even had time to focus. I think I zone focused this. It almost looks like I'm focused in the foreground here. But I sort of just, kind of liked the way that my subjects here were fitting together for a second. And I also was getting close into the roll. I wanted to make sure I shot it. But yeah, the light looks nice. I don't know, it's not quite a keeper, but and again, these high tone silvers look really good. Now, what Marcel was pointing out was this part of the tree sort of looks like an animal or a horn or something. And so I was prepping a shot for that, and then he sort of got interested in this up here too. And this is probably 2.8 again. That's my default if I'm wanting some out of focus on this lens. Man, looks really good. Come up, this. Right, this out of focus area stuff wouldn't look nearly as good on a digital camera. Now let's see here. Right, this is the very first imperfection I've seen, and that may just be, that could be dust, right? I was telling you I left this up for a long time, but I have seen nothing that would look like a scratch or dirt or a sign of sloppy bulk loading or whatever, right? Or right, sometimes with bulk loaders you have to worry about maybe the felt's a little dirty or a little too tight, or right, and there's just zero signs of any imperfections. I feel like it's even better than right, whatever. It's like, yeah. Now here's a little action sequence. Oh, here's another one. Is this something? A little something. It took me like 3 days to finally get to this roll after I had developed it. Right, little action. Sun through a rock. And then he was watching the puddle. I don't know. This is one I think with a little editing I might like it more. I maybe wanted the ripples to show up a little better. Right, this is maybe one thing I think that I'm relatively good at compared to the average photographer is knowing how to meter. And this is a good one where like I don't want to just point to him because there's so much light reflecting off of the river. So I really have to point down towards the rocks and get the river out of play and then recompose. Again, I want to see kind of how much I can open up those shadows. I mean, that shadow's a little bit weak, but not really. Now this one's interesting. It's almost like right, again, like this is the lens where there's a little bit of flaring because of all of the sky, right? Right, there's so much light in 3/4 of this image, and it bleeds into and lifts the shadows, right? So this part of the rock, I feel like is getting some lift, right? Right, because there's not modern coatings on that 8 element, right? And the rigid is the same way, the 50 rigid, where if there's a lot of exposure in one part of the image, that extra light can end up in kind of your shadow areas and lift them up, which is part of the reason that people really like them for black and white photography, because you're often trying to lift your shadows and get a little bit of shadow lift, right? Whether it's from a faster film or here it's flare. And it doesn't kill your image. It sort of can make it a little less contrasty, but often has this sort of nice lifting effect. And then here I focused on my sun, right? 100%. That's impressive sharpness, right? I mean, it's almost like, right, I can't say it's as sharp as like my 24 megapixel SL2S with an Apo lens, but I can say it's like plenty sharp for what I'm wanting to do. Right? There's nothing about this where I feel like, oh, if I can only make it where I can really see his eyelashes, right? It's like, no, like this is perfectly good. Sort of reminds me of looking at like 16 megapixel digital files. Yeah, this is right. I think I focused on his hand. We're getting towards the end. Is this the last shot? Yeah, this is the last shot on the roll. Yeah, I don't know. This doesn't quite look like 2.8. It might be, or maybe f4. Yeah. Yeah, I like the way his skin looks here. Okay. Oh. And again, like look at the water here, right? I think this is, there's just something about Foma 100, and I wish I had more side by sides where I feel like this is an area where Foma 100 excels. Right, this nice gradation through mid to high tones and beautiful like classic grain structure. All right, so I have like zero negative feedback on the roll. And about the film, like you know, it's like I've almost always shoot like FP4 and Ferrania P33, and yeah, those are my go-tos sort of at that speed. And sometimes Delta 100. But now I see you know, I see Foma 100, and if I think of it not as like, right, this really didn't look like an underexpose and push. It's like, right, with this sort of extra Xtol development, it basically functions as a 200 speed film. Right, and so then I get curious of like, well, what if I go back and I shoot it at 400 or maybe 640 or 800, and I go with an even more aggressive push? Now what does it start to look like? Right, but back to like, this is one of the cheapest films you can buy, right? A lot of people buy Arista EDU 100 for like, I don't know what it is, but right, I don't know what one lot film's going to sell it at. I'm going to guess basically the same price. This is a budget film, and there's not much to pick at unless, you know, you're like, I really want more grain, or I want, you know, some different sensitivity, right? It's like, okay, I look forward to editing them, right? I'm gonna, maybe I'll pause like and just do some edits and come back and show some final favorites. Yeah, I'll do that. Okay, I'm back after a little bit of editing and a fresh cup of coffee. I'm just gonna go through again, right? Post editing, my favorites, which ended up being a few, right? So this one, I just like that 2.8. I like the light. I like his hand right here. I like the glow. Just sort of the focus fall off is really nice. Right, he's reading his book. It's a good shot. This one, I'm increasingly liking sort of these like silly photos where I find something kind of ridiculous, but I also put my shadow in it, right? I know it's not totally unique, but yeah, I like this one for that reason. I went with a vertical crop on this because it just removed a few things that were distracting, and it also just kind of makes it look more like this woman is like flying on a shadow pole or something. So this, I liked all the texture in the siding, and then also just this fun shadow, and just all the midtones and tonality was pretty. This sort of fits in a set that I'm working on. Of course, I'm going to keep the one of my son playing soccer. There's actually a moment right after this where he like jumped up and celebrated and like spun, and I missed it, and I'm upset that I missed it. I like this one. I like he's, it's a very real moment. Yeah, nothing new to say on this one, but I like the final edit. Here I did some cropping, but I do like how he just pops off the background and this kind of interesting object there. This one I like, and I like that one. Sometimes I get a sort of obsessive over thinking I can only keep one. It's like, yeah, I can keep two, right? This one I just really like the sort of the three-dimensional feel and the light, the direction of the light. And it's interesting enough of a composition. Right here I really like that he's interested in that hole. Just the shapes and the tones are nice. And in this sequence, right, I really like the sequence. I sort of like that final shot best, but really I like it as a sequence. Yeah, This one I tried a couple different edits. There's actually a lot more shape in the sky than I had noticed before. And I was trying to decide how much I wanted to bring that out. And then I like this one if you can kind of get into his expression. I wouldn't like it as a small photo, but I like it when it can be a bigger photo. And then this one is really nice. Okay. Take care.